So today is April 12th. We're going to start reviewing for EOC, and we're going to work backwards on our review. So what we ended with was quadratics, and that's what we're going to start with in our review. So we'll end with solving equations, and then you'll be taking your EOC. Remember, for my online people, your EOC, you have to come into the school to take your EOC. So go ahead and get that set up and make sure you know you're coming in school to take that EOC. But on all these reviews, I'm going to try to show you any shortcut I possibly can to make sure you do well on your EOC. So with factoring is where we're starting with our review. With factoring, greatest common factor can be done in Desmos, in your graphing calculator that you'll be allowed to use on your EOC. EOC end of course exam. So under math tools, test practice, these are the tests that you can, these are the options that will let that you'll be able to use on your EOC. Ooh, struggling. All right, so you're going to choose your assessment, and our assessment is at the very bottom, South Carolina Standard Assessments. Let me scroll down a little bit so you can see it. Standard Assessments is at the, and then here are the three calculators that you will be allowed to use. So you can, for factoring, we're actually going to go to the graphing calculator because you can find your greatest common factor. I put it in GCF and then some number, I'll just say 30, and then another number, 5. So greatest common factor between 30 and 5 is 15. Greatest common factor between 30 and 25 is still 5. So 20 is 10. So we can use this to help us find the greatest common factor. And you'll be able to use this on your test. So for our greatest common factor, we're working on, I'll just do 2 of each of these. We're working on this first one, our greatest common factor of 21 and 12. 21 and 12 is 3. So that's what we're going to factor out. We're going to factor out 3. You cannot do variables. I mean, you can always try, but when you put a variable in there, it says no. Can't do that. So can't do this. That goes away. So the greatest common factor is 3. So when we're factoring by greatest common factor, you're dividing out. I don't need this. This needs to go away. Go away. What we just found, our greatest common factor of 3. And then you just divide. 21 divided by 3 is 7. Write down your C. 12 divided by 3, or negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. Put that in parentheses, and what you divided out, your greatest common factor goes in front. So there's your answer. Remember, when you do greatest common factor with variables, it's always the smallest variable that they have in common is your greatest common factor. So, for instance, this one has 6 x's, this has 2 x's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2. How many they have in common? The greatest number they have in common is 1, 2. So they have 2 x's in common. I'm going to factor out 2 x's. And then there's always a 1 in front if you want to figure out the greatest common factor between 1 and 8 is 1. Again, you can do that here if you would like. And then the greatest common factor between y and y, how many they have in common is 1y. And you divide that out. 1 divided by 1 is 1. I have 6 x's. I'm taking 2 of them out. I'll have 4 left. 1y and 1y cancel out. So it's just be x to the 4th. 8. 2 x's on top, 2 x's on bottom, cancel out. 1y on top, 1y on bottom, cancel out. So there, after you factor out your greatest common factor, that's what you get. Put it in parentheses. I made that 1 go away because there's always a 1 in front of your variable. And what we divided by goes out front. Again, there's always a 1 there, so I'm going to let this be my box so it looks a little nicer. It's not wrong to put the 1 there, just makes it look more work. It doesn't need to look any harder. All right, one last one of Gray's common factor. Gray's common factor between 75 and 30. I always slow this video down if I'm going too quick. It's 15. I'm just trying to not make this video too long. The least number of A's, A squared and A. That means they have one A in common. B cubed and B squared, the smallest is the 2. So B squared. C to the 1, C to the 0, there's no C here. So the smallest is no C's. If that's a little confusing, you can list them all out. A, and A, 1A in common. So Gray's common factor is A. 3 B's and 2 B's. Gray's common factor is 2 B's. And then one has a C and one doesn't, so there is no Gray's common factor. So divide them out. 75 divided by 15 is 5. You have 2 A's on top and 1 on bottom, so 1, we'll cross out with 1. 3 B's on top, 2 on bottom. The easiest way to see it is to actually write them all out. It just takes a while. So I had 2 A's on top, A squared, 3 B's on top, 3 B's, B, 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 and 1 C. And I'm dividing by A, B squared. So 1A, 1A, 1B, 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 1B. So what's left on top is A, B, C. A, B, C. 1A on top, 1A on top. 2 B's on top, 2 B's on bottom. 30 divided by 15 is 2. Make sure you put that in parentheses and write out your Gray's common factor, what you divided out in front. It's being multiplied to all of that. And there's your answer. All right, difference of squares. I'm going to show you the way I taught you, and then I'll show you the way some people teach it, which is a little quicker, but my way works for all the next 3 types of equations. And the other way only works for this types of equations. So difference of squares, B is going to equal 0. So we need to know what multiplies to AC and adds to B. And B is always going to be 0 for difference of squares. So it multiplies, A is 1, C is 64. So what multiplies to negative 64 and adds to 0. And if you don't know, that's when you make your list. What multiplies to 64? Well, 1 and 64, 2, and to find your other factor, you're going to take 64 and divide it by 2, 32. Then we go to 3. 64 divided by 3 is a decimal, so that doesn't work. 64 divided by 4. 4 and 16. 64 divided by 5. You just keep going. Decimal doesn't work. 64 divided by 6. Decimal. 64 divided by 7. Decimal. 64 divided by 8. 8. And once your next number that you would try is on the other side, you know your list is complete. So out of these numbers, if I subtract 2 of them, I want a difference of 0. That'd be 8 and 8. One just needs to be negative. So your answer would be W plus 8, W minus 8. Okay. Difference of squares. There's actually a rule that says difference of square is A plus B, A minus B. but they have to be perfect squares. W has to be a perfect square, and 64 has to be a perfect square. So W squared, what's being squared would be W, so W goes in the first part. 64, the square root of 64 is 8, so 8 and 8. One's positive, one's negative. That's just the rule. For the next one, I can use that rule again. It's the quickest way to do these. Square root of 9k squared is 3k. So 3k and 3k. Square root of 1 is 1. So 1 and 1. One's positive, one's negative. All right. The square root of 4m squared, oh, light turned off, is 2m. So that goes in the front of both parentheses. And then the square root of negative 81 is 9n. One's positive, one's negative. Or you can do reverse box method like I'm about to show you down here. All right, stick with me, 3 more, and I'll be done. So 1 multiplies to a times c, 1 times 30 is 30. 1 multiplies to 30 and adds to 13, negative 13. If you don't know, you write your list, 30, 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 4, I don't think works, 5 does, 5 and 6. The next number I'd try would be 6, and I know 6 works because it's right here. So which of them add to 13 is 3 and 10. Both of them have to be negative. To multiply to a positive and add to a negative, both of them have to be negative. Since a is 1, you can jump straight to your answer. P minus 3, P minus 10. You can jump straight to your answer if a is 1. And on these trinomials, a equals 1. On these trinomials, a is greater than 1. And we'll have to do reverse box method. All right, what multiplies to negative 40 and adds to negative 3. If you don't know, make your list. 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 3 doesn't go into it, 4 and 10, 5 and 8, 6 doesn't work, and 7 doesn't work. Next number I'd try would be 8. So 5 and 8, subtract to give you 3. If I'm adding to a negative number, you want the bigger number to be negative. 8 is bigger than 5. So I want my bigger number to be negative. And then you can jump straight to your answer since a is 1. So y plus 5, y minus 8. And it's okay if you have it reversed, like y minus 8 and y plus 5. That's still the same thing. Multiplies to 36, adds to 12. 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4, 4 and 9, 6 and 6. Oh, there it is, 6 and 6. Add to 12. So a plus 6, a minus 6. All right, these last 3 are the hardest because a is not equal to 1, and we have to use our reverse box method. but we still start off the same way. What multiplies to A times C. Now that A is not 1, be careful. A times C is 9, but we're still adding to B, 10. So it multiplies to 9 and adds to 10. So factors of 9, 1 and 9, 3 and 3. So don't forget 1 and 9, because that's the one that adds to 10 here. Now you can't go straight to your answer, because if you tried to, it'd be just so if you see it, P plus 1, P plus 9, and P times P gives you P squared, or X squared, sorry, and we need it to be 3X squared. So that's why you can't just jump straight to your answer here. So reverse box method. So the first number, 3X squared, is in the top box. My last number is 3. The numbers we chose, 1 and 9, you have to add a variable with it because I have to add up to 10x. So 1x plus 9x gives me 10x. And then we take out the greatest common factor between 3x squared and 1x, which is x. 3x squared. The easiest way to finish from there is x times what gives me 3x squared. Start with the number. 1 times 3 gives me 3. X times x gives me 3x squared. So 1x times 3x is 3x squared. 1x times 1 is 1x. 3x times 3 is 9x. And then just to check, 1 times 3 is 3. All right, your answers is the outside. And make sure you put some kind of sign with them. You can't just put 1x3 because they're two different terms. It's a positive 3. 3x1 is a positive 1, so put a plus sign. And then to check it, you would FOIL. 1x times 3x is 3x squared. First, 3x squared. Outside, 1x times 1 is 1x. Inside, 3x times 3 is 9x. And 3 times 1, the outside of both, is 3. So you have 3x squared, 1x and 9x is 10x plus 3. So you know you're right. Unfortunately, there's not a shorter way to do this. There's another longer way to do this, but that's besides the point. All right, 2 more, and then you can go practice your own delta math. So what multiplies 12 times negative 2 is negative 24. Multiplies to AC and adds to 5. 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3, I think it's 8, but we'll be sure. 8, 4, I think it's 6, 4 and 6. And then 5 doesn't work because it gives you a decimal. 6 would be the next number you choose. So those are all your options. So 3 and 8. If you're adding to a positive, you want the bigger number to be positive, so the smaller number has to be negative. And then you do your reverse box with it. 12c squared goes up top, negative 2 goes on bottom, and then you use the numbers you chose in the middle. Negative 3x and 8. Oops, I'm sorry, we're on C in this one. Not x's and 8c. Greatest common factor between 12 and 8, you can go back to your calculator. 12 and 8 is 4. And they both have 1c in common. Two ways to do it. So you can do the greatest common factor between 12 and negative 3. is 3, and they both have a c in common. So 4 times 3 is 12, c times c is c squared. 8c divided by 4c is 2, because 4 times 2 is 8. 3 times negative 1 is c, and then 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. So remember, when you factor, the outside is your answer. When you multiply, the inside is your answer. I still have people getting that confused. So 4c minus 1, minus negative 1 becomes a subtract 1. And 3c, and it's a positive 2. Plus 2. Last one. 4 times 7, 14, 28, and negative 16. What multiplies to 28? 1 and 28, 2 and 14, 3 is a decimal, so that doesn't work. 4 and 7, 3 didn't work. 4 and 7, 5 won't work because it doesn't end in a 5 or 0. 6 won't work because it's not divisible by 3. 7 and 4. Oh, already have that one. So there's your list. So it's 2 and 14. That adds to 16. It has to add to a negative 16, so they both have to be negative. And then we'll do the reverse box method. The first number goes up top. Last number goes on bottom. Then you're using your numbers, negative 2 with one v, negative 14 with another v. That breaks up this number. So we didn't change anything from this. We just broke up 16 as 14 and 2. Then take out our greatest common factor. Greatest common factor between 4 and 2 is 2, and they both have a v in common. Greatest common factor between 4 and 14, again, is 2, and they both have a v in common. 2 times 7 gives me 14, but I need to be a negative 14, so it needs to be a negative 7. 2 times what gives me negative 2? Negative 1. And to make sure your signs are right, negative 7 times negative 1 is a positive 7. So your answers are the outside. So we have 2v minus 7, 2v minus 1. And that's your answer. All right, if you want more practice with me, we can set up some time for some tutoring, and then we can work on these a little bit slower. Remember, with this video, you can always slow it down, speed it up, do whatever you need to. Email me if you have questions, and welcome back from spring break.